So, this is another video, and I don't know which series this is going to go into because it is about uh, my experience with the relationship between the primal self and the 96 level initiation, because they're kind of intertwined. So I might put them in both playlists, I think. Yeah, why not? Because it's involving the two. So I'm only just coming to this realization right now. But when I was facing the 96 level initiation, and I have described this in, one of those 96 level initiation videos. I think it was the number one when I was describing my experience. What happened was I experienced a trauma, a very severe trauma of a tree falling on my bus, facing that sense of, wow, I could have lost my life, like really dealing with massive trauma. That just went kablamo, and Primal Self came up and was like, I've got this, I'll protect you, and it just took over. And I understand why. I was in, really severe trauma, and I had to go to that primal survival mechanism, which, was that I just couldn't trust people. I could not trust the people I was closest to. I was very fearful of people. I really, really was. I had a lot of love surrounding me, a lot of love and a lot of support. But the primal self was so massively panicked that, even the people I loved the most and trusted the most, I couldn't do it, because I was just so heavily identified with it. But you see, what happened was, and I played it out for quite a few months until, there was another traumatic event of my niece committing suicide, and not traumatic for me personally, but traumatic as in, it's awful. It's awful to, experience someone, a family member, someone who's close, that to happen to them, and then to see, how it affects those who remain living, like her parents and her direct family, those who, really, really were very close with her. And just brought me into my heart to support them especially. I experienced my own sense of grief and everything, but it was more supporting others in their trauma. So, it's like I had to step out of my primal self to support people I love very, very much, and to just play a support role, to express that love and support. And, even I was even sort of energetically sort of supporting too, just to do what I could to help ease the burden, because it was just so overwhelming, particularly for my brother, like her father, like it was, he was just in pure panic, primal self, his primal self, and so I didn't let go of the primal self in that experience. What I did was I bypassed it, and I was like, that's, that cannot come into this. And it brought me into my heart, and when I was in my heart, I realized, you fool, not me, I'm not a fool, but the fool of the self that I had built up, this huge egoic self that, was my sense. It was a strong sense of, what, it thought spirituality should be about. I should be this high-crested being and no more than anyone else, and, I'm right, everyone else is wrong, and it was all being fueled by the primal self, but it in itself was, that was a very distinct difference in the initiation there. I let go of that egoic self, and I can see how helpful it was to let go of that, because, it was about a year, maybe you know, over a year later, so sometime earlier this year, where finally, you know, that primal self, it came up again. I saw it. I no longer had this construct of seeing myself as better than others and or superior to others. I no longer had this construct of, you know, this solid construct of, you know, what I think Christhood is. Like, you know, you still keep dismantling all of this, but you know, like, I just know, like, question everything, question every attachment, every expectation, like, all of it. So I was able to confidently and easily address the primal self at last. So, you know, I had to do a lot of work to get there, and finally, you know, be able to deconstruct that primal self. For me, like, it doesn't happen the same way for everybody, you know. But I just wanted to share, like, you know, there was a distinct difference between the two, but that primal self was kind of fueling and amplifying the spiritual self, you know, that self-focus. It was really amplifying it. So, and I think also it's worthwhile noting that, you know, that we do, a lot of spiritual people, like, you know, we do encounter some very significant trauma experiences, and it is to drive that primal self to the surface. You know, we said, yep, do it. I want to resolve this psychology. So we bring that, you know, we go into sort of, you know, intense experiences like trees falling on your buses, you know, losing loved ones to suicide, like whatever it might be. There's just, you know, it is endless what happens, what we can experience, you know, childhood trauma and so on. But it's there to push this primal self up where we can see it. And when we can see it, once we've cleared enough beforehand, cleared enough of, you know, all of those separate selves, you know, and hopefully that 96 level initiation, although, you know, it could be done before that, I see no reason why not, but it helps to have that ego out of the way. Then, you know, once we've resolved enough, we're ready to, we've done enough work, you know, we can do it, and you can do it. So, yeah, or maybe you've done it. Who knows? Okay, that's it. See ya.